Welcome to Sweet Sleep. There was a quiet college town that I'm thinking of, and two students just kind of randomly met underneath a very large shade tree on the campus grounds. They were both about to experience quite a miracle. One of the students was Brian. He was calm and thoughtful. He listened a lot more than he spoke. But he carried kindness like a quiet flame, always burning hot. The other, his name was Marty. He was energetic and full of laughter. He could make a room light up with a single grin. From the very first day they met, something unseen tied them together. Not just friendship, but something sacred. The guys studied together, laughed through the long, cold nights, and shared cheap meals and their deepest dreams. Brian, he wanted to teach. He wanted to help others see the meaning of life's small miracles that happened all the time, and be there to help the people and the kids just kind of realize what was happening. Marty was a gadget guy. He wanted to make machines, but he wanted to make machines that could heal, that could give people that didn't have hope, new hope. The boys, they didn't have much money. But what they did have was a very, very rare friendship. They didn't know it, but it would be the kind of friendship that lasts a lifetime and beyond. They had each other, and that was enough. Time went on. Season after season, semester after semester, until they both came to their senior year. And with it, a letter came that changed everything. Marty had been accepted into an engineering fellowship overseas, and it was the dream of his lifetime. But when he read the fine print, his excitement started to dim. The scholarship covered the tuition, but not the travel to overseas, not the food, and not a place to live. Marty didn't have the money. So he just smiled and softly kind of said under his breath, maybe it just wasn't meant to be. But Brian saw through the smile. He knew Marty really well. He could see the disappointment deep in his heart. And he saw that secret dream. It was slowly dying. That night, in the darkness, while the campus was sound asleep, Brian sat by their dorm window. And he prayed. Brian had a small inheritance. It was big enough to take him to graduate school and even beyond. That inheritance was supposed to be there for his whole life. It would secure his future. But while he sat there by the window, he looked up at the stars, and there was even a small hint of the moon. He heard a small voice inside of himself. Give without expecting. Let love be your reason. He knew he heard it, and it made a change in his path. So the next morning, he did just that. Quietly, secretly, he went and he paid for Marty's ticket. He paid the housing, and he paid for the first few months abroad. But it was a secret, and he never told anyone. When Marty got the letter from the university saying, "An anonymous donor has covered all your expenses," he was overwhelmed, and he even couldn't help down but maybe cry a little bit. This was out of the blue. Marty told Brian, "Can you believe it? Someone out there just made my dream become real." Brian only smiled and said, "When a door opens, you have to walk through it." Weeks later, Marty hugged him at the airport. "I'll make you proud, bro." Brian smiled through his misty eyes, and he said, "You already have." And as Marty disappeared into the crowd, Brian whispered, "Thank you, Lord, for letting me love someone enough to become a giver and not just a taker." Well, years passed. Marty took off. Their lives went in their separate directions. Marty's work actually changed lives. Children who lost their health and became bedridden could run again. All of this was due to the devices that Marty designed and built. He became known as the engineer with a heart. Brian, meanwhile, taught in a small school. He lived humbly but peacefully. He'd see Marty on TV sometimes, and his eyes would glisten with quiet pride. He was proud of what Marty was accomplishing. Brian never told anybody what he'd done. He didn't need to. He had that special joy of watching Marty bloom, and he knew that secretly he had a major hand in causing that to happen. Then, one autumn, Marty came back to visit. Of course, he stayed at Brian's apartment. These guys are deep friends. Brian's apartment was quite small. Old books, thin blankets, not much food in the fridge, and a few unpaid bills on the counter. Marty gently kind of questioned him about it, but Brian just laughed it off and said, "I live simple, dude. It keeps me grateful. It keeps me humble." But something deep down inside of Marty caused his heart to ache. He felt a stir, something unsettling was happening inside of him. There was something that was a knowing that he couldn't pinpoint. About a week later, curiosity overcame Marty. So what he did is he called the university asking about that mysterious donation that was given to him from years ago. Everybody was just clammed up. Nobody said anything. But after several calls and one kind-hearted clerk, he finally got a hint. A partial bank number. Marty thought, dang, those digits look really familiar. So he went back through his old paperwork and he checked his old rent receipts from years ago. And there it was, staring him in the face. That same number. It was Brian's. Marty just fell into his chair, completely stunned. Tears welled up into his eyes. His voice broke as he whispered, "It was Brian all along." Oh my God. He felt the flood of love and humanity wash over him. He realized he never wanted me to know. He gave up his inheritance for me. Marty was extremely overwhelmed into a long period of silence. And Marty made a secret promise to himself. I will repay Brian 1,000 times over, and Brian will just never, ever know. From then on, Marty began to give. Quietly, secretly, he began to give over and over to his best friend, just like Brian had done for him. And he kept it secret. Marty arranged for Brian's essays to get published. He sent anonymous donations to fund Brian's literacy programs. He made sure grants and opportunities found their way to his friend's doorstep, always disguised as just pure luck. Whenever Brian said, "I don't know how these blessings just keep coming at me," Marty would just smile and say, "When a door opens, you just have to walk through it." And they would both just break out in laughter. The years flowed like a calm river. Brian's foundation grew, helping thousands to read, changing lives through words and compassion. All of this flowed through Brian's life. Brian became quite the hero. He never realized his old friend Marty had become his benefactor, his guardian angel. Then events came about where, because of Marty's great work, he received a major humanitarian award. He was about to be outed. He stood before the crowd, his voice trembling. There was a man, he said, who once gave up his fortune. He gave up his dream so I could live mine. He never asked for thanks. He never sought recognition. Because of him, I learned what true love looks like. In the dark, in the audience, way in the back, Brian was sitting there. Marty didn't know it. Tears were running down his face. He didn't need to be named. He knew that he was talking about him. After that ceremony, they both walked outside, and they met under an oak tree, kind of like the same one where they met each other so many years ago. The air was cool. The sounds were still. Marty softly said, "You always seem to know something I didn't." Brian smiled. "Maybe it's that giving leaves you with more than receiving." They laughed quietly together, and the stars shimmered like a witness to their bond. They never admitted to each other what each knew. And in the twilight of their lives, many years later, Marty always made sure that Brian was cared for. When illness came, help arrived. Always mysteriously, always kindly, always anonymously. Marty was taking care of Brian. Brian would smile and say, "I've been blessed in unseen ways," and he was right. Later on, Brian wound up passing away. The church was filled with people. Brian's life had a huge impact. Students were there, family was there, friends were there, all of them touched by Brian's life. Marty stood quietly at Brian's casket. He placed a hand on it and whispered through the years and through his tears, "You were the miracle, Brian. You always were." It was Brian's sacrifice that made Marty what he was. That's why he stepped up and secretly, under the radar, took care of Brian till his dying day. As he stepped outside from the chapel, a gentle wind stirred the trees. He looked up, and in that quiet rustling, he felt Brian's spirit. And he felt Brian's spirit smiling. Brian finally knew. Because, you know what? True friendship never really ends. And love never asks for anything in return. He knew in that moment that he had a true love and a true friendship that would last into the heavens above. They both knew each other's secret now. Greater love has no man that he lays his life down for his friend. For God so loved the world that he gave. And in return, he got you for all eternity. and He got me for all eternity. Now you can close your eyes and go to sleep, knowing their story and how it started from heaven and it will never end. Good night.